The United States of America, a country that once inspired hope and awe, is now a shadow of its former self. Its decline has been gradual but undeniable, and we are living in an age where the end of the U.S. empire is becoming more evident with every passing day. This is not mere speculation. It's a tale told by history, by facts, and by the trajectory of every empire that has come before it. Today, we'll unravel the economic, societal, and spiritual collapse of the United States and understand why it now teeters on the edge of irrelevance in the global stage. Let us begin with the economy. If there's one thing that defined the American empire in its heyday, it was its economic might. After World War II, the United States emerged as the dominant global power, controlling 50% of the world's manufacturing output. The dollar became the world's reserve currency, and the Bretton Woods system established the U.S. at the center of the global financial order. But here lies the tragedy. The very strength that made the U.S. an empire has become its Achilles heel. Consider the staggering reality of America's debt, over $33 trillion as of 2024. This debt is no longer just a number, it is a ticking time bomb. Interest payments alone consume hundreds of billions of dollars annually, leaving little room for investment in infrastructure or social welfare. Worse still, the U.S. has been borrowing to fund wars and bailouts rather than building a sustainable future. Now, let's talk about de-dollarization, a term that didn't even exist in the global lexicon a decade ago, but is now on the lips of leaders across the world. The dollar's dominance is waning. In the 1970s, the U.S. secured the petrodollar agreement with Saudi Arabia, ensuring that oil sales would be conducted exclusively in dollars. This single-handedly propped up the U.S. economy for decades, but that foundation is crumbling. Saudi Arabia, once the linchpin of the petrodollar system, is now cozying up to China, agreeing to accept yuan for its oil. The BRICS nations, representing over 40% of the world's population and nearly a quarter of global GDP, are leading the charge in challenging the dollar. In 2023, BRICS proposed a new currency for trade among its members, bypassing the dollar entirely. Central banks across the world are buying gold at record levels, signaling a preparation for a post-dollar world. What does this mean for the U.S.? It means imports will become more expensive as the dollar weakens. Inflation, already a persistent issue, will skyrocket. The cost of living for the average American, already stretched thin, will become unbearable. The days when America could print its way out of trouble are coming to an end, and the consequences will be catastrophic. But the economic story is only one chapter of this tale. Let us now turn to geopolitics, where the U.S. is witnessing the collapse of its influence. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were not just military failures, they were moral failures. Trillions of dollars spent, hundreds of thousands of lives lost. And for what? The promises of democracy and stability gave way to chaos and anti-American sentiment. Meanwhile, the world moves on. China is asserting itself as a global superpower, building infrastructure across Asia, Africa, and Latin America through its Belt and Road Initiative. Russia, despite being sanctioned and isolated, has found ways to strengthen ties with nations like India and Saudi Arabia. Even Europe, once America's closest ally, is distancing itself. The rise of a multipolar world is not hypothetical. It's happening now. BRICS expansion to include countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE marks a clear challenge to Western hegemony. The U.S., once the puppet master of global politics, is now being sidelined. At home, the United States is collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. The American dream, a concept that inspired millions to seek a better life, is dead. Income inequality in the United States is among the highest in the developed world. The top 1% of Americans own more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. Middle-class families are disappearing, replaced by a growing underclass that struggles to afford basic necessities. Look at healthcare, for instance. The United States spends more on healthcare than any other nation, yet its outcomes are worse. Millions remain uninsured, and medical bills are the leading cause of bankruptcy. Education fares no better. American students rank far below their global peers in math, science, and reading, yet they graduate with tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. But the most troubling aspect of America's societal collapse is its moral and spiritual decline. The United States was founded on principles that acknowledge the existence of a higher power. Its motto, "In God We Trust," was once a guiding principle. But today, faith is in retreat, churches are emptying, and secularism is on the rise. This isn't just about religion, it's about the values that hold a society together. Without a moral compass, America has embraced materialism, individualism, and hedonism. Families are breaking apart. Mental health crises are rampant, with depression and anxiety becoming the defining features of a generation. Addiction, whether to opioids, social media, or consumerism, is destroying lives and communities. And what about the government? It has become a symbol of dysfunction. Gridlock in Washington ensures that little gets done. The federal government shuts down over budget disputes while Americans go without basic services. Corruption is rampant, with politicians serving corporations rather than their constituents. The American empire's decline is not unprecedented. History is littered with fallen empires. Rome, for instance, succumbed to internal decay, economic mismanagement, and overreach. The British Empire, once the largest in history, could not sustain its dominance after World War II. The United States is now following the same path, driven by the same hubris and arrogance that doomed its predecessors. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of America's decline is the rise of violence and chaos. Mass shootings are a near daily occurrence. The U.S. has more guns than people, and the government is powerless to enact meaningful reform. Infrastructure, once a source of pride, is crumbling. In 2021, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave the country's infrastructure a C grade. Natural disasters expose the inadequacy of emergency responses, from hurricanes devastating coastal communities to wildfires consuming entire towns. Urban decay is evident in cities like Detroit and San Francisco, where homelessness and crime are rampant. So, what happens next? The end of the U.S. empire will not come with a bang, but with a whimper. It will be marked by a slow unraveling, a gradual loss of influence, and a descent into irrelevance. But this decline is also a lesson in the dangers of pride, overreach, and moral decay. Empires rise and fall, but the end is always sour. As we watch the United States grapple with its inevitable decline, let us remember, no empire is eternal, and no power is immune to the forces of history. Enjoyed this video? Show your support by hitting the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers by next month.